Hey, my friends, what's up? I just wanted to talk about grocery shopping and maybe some tips, especially if you're a really young person and maybe you're shopping for the first time. Maybe you're in like college. There's a lot of people who contact me that are very young and they're just starting to get out into the world and do their own thing. And so I got thinking about this. I was like, man, I take for granted, and I'm sure a lot of us do, some of the things that we know. And it may not be like, earth shattering news here or information, but sometimes sharing a little bit of something that you may consider just standard knowledge may actually be very beneficial. So I have to sometimes just remember that. And so thus this video. And so when I think about grocery shopping, first off, before I leave the house, I need to identify what I'm going to buy. A lot of people I know do not make a grocery list, to my surprise. I do. In fact, sometimes I start on my grocery list a few days before I go grocery shopping. And that may seem a little bit extreme, but there's times that I revise my shopping list. That's why I like to do it a few days ahead of time so I can kind of cross some things out and say, no, I really should be eating better. I shouldn't buy that item. Because I noticed that a lot of times that my first attempt to make the list, it's full of things that I probably should not really consume. Typically I eat pretty well. But that doesn't mean that sometimes on my first initial attempt to the list, things don't sneak on there. There's times that I just, might have a craving for something. Potato chips, pizza, cookies, whatever. And typically by the second or third attempt to revise the list, and I'm not saying that I'll always make that many revisions, but at least one revision, that I can pretty much at that point filter out all that crap food, the junk food or the highly processed food, and get back to the food that I really do eat and I know that it's good for me. And so that's the first thing. Create a list. Even though you think that you may be able to remember everything, and you might, but there are so many times in the past when I was younger that I just thought that way too. And I would get there and I think to myself, oh yeah, I got everything. Only to turn around and get home. I remember when I got home that, oh, I needed this and that, or I didn't buy enough of this. And so write things down. It just takes just a few moments. It's not a big deal. With today's technology, you can just enter your list into your phone or other smart devices, and it really is not an issue. The next thing is, don't be afraid to use coupons. Almost all of my coupons as of late has been digital coupons, but sometimes I get mailed coupons, physical coupons, and I use those too. So I have noticed that I typically use anywhere from 2 to 5 coupons a visit. Sometimes my coupons give me a free item, like it's completely free. And then other times it might be a 50% off or anywhere from like 20 cents up to like $1.50 typically off an item. And that really adds up over time. I personally used to grocery shop once every 2 weeks. I am currently shopping once a week now, just because it's very difficult to have enough fresh food if you only do once every 2 weeks. And so I've just said to myself, just go out and make the trip. It's not that big of a deal. But it is a little bit more for me than maybe for some of you guys. I live in a more rural area. And so I have to kind of travel out a few cities away to actually get to a decent sized grocery store, a store that's going to actually have stuff that I want and at a good price. And that's another thing. You want to be very cautious of where you go. Just because you've always gone there doesn't mean that there aren't better places. For example, I was kind of one of those guys that I went to Walmart for the majority of my youth, and I bought groceries there, only to kind of recognize that there's a lot of other places obviously, that I never checked out. And so now I just don't go to Walmart at all. I haven't been there for a long time to get groceries, at least. And so you kind of just figure out, what stores have what you want at the prices that are fair. And of course, it's even better if it's the best price in town. And the next thing I want to say is the time of day to shop. And before I even get into that, I want to say, what days to shop over others. For me, in my area, a lot of the new sales start either Wednesday or Thursday, and there's one place that does it on Sunday. But I think that in most areas, in most large cities, it's like Wednesday or Thursday, if I'm not incorrect on that. That's just from my experience and where I've lived in the past. But it may be slightly different in your area. So check into that and kind of see when the new ads come out. Now that day is the best day to go if you're trying to get the best selection of those priced items. I mean, it should be obvious, but obviously if things go on sale, people are going to probably, it might be more desirable for most people than not. So if you want that as well, get there earlier than later in the week. Now, in terms of going shopping in general, though, even if you're not really, into the whole sales and stuff, let's just say that you have certain things that you like to buy over others and you're just set on your list. And so you don't care if it's on sale or not, you're just going to buy it anyways. Then it makes a lot more sense to go out and purchase your groceries during the week over going on the weekend. The weekends, especially Saturday. Saturday is usually the busiest day of the week, according to all the research. It's pretty much unanimous that Saturday, midday on Saturday is just a complete nightmare. And it's usually between noon and 4 p.m. is like the busiest time of the week. And I think Sunday is like the second busiest. And then if you're talking about the busiest during the week, Monday and Tuesday sometimes are cited as some of the busier days of the week because it's typically people forget certain things on the weekend when they were out because they probably didn't have a list, right? And so they kind of try to pick up these things on the way home from work. And the only problem with that is that Monday and Tuesday also are those days that have the least amount of selection because the weekend just hit and the stores really haven't fully been able to recoup and restock from the rush from the weekend. So if you really want to know the best days typically from most cities to shop, it's going to be Wednesday or Thursday. And maybe if you're talking about Friday, it could be early Friday, but I wouldn't, go midday or past on Friday. And when we're talking about specifically Wednesday and Thursday, which are typically the best days to go, really, you want to go early or late. Once again, you want to miss that rush crowd at noon and that crowd right after people get off of work. So typically between noon and 6 p.m., you just want to avoid that time period. But it's so much better. It's such a better experience to go early, like between like 6 in the morning to 8 in the morning. That there's a little window there. And also, and this is what I do personally, I go late. Now, some people call late like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and that's about their limit. Because a lot of people have to go to sleep and get up and go to work in the next day, early in the morning. For me and my lifestyle, I kind of have it that I kind of leave my house around 11 o'clock to midnight, somewhere in there. And I try to get there around that time period of midnight-ish. And I just know between like midnight and 1 a.m. is a really sweet spot, typically speaking, at least in my area. And this is really good, of course, if you have a 24-hour grocery store. And I only have one 24-hour grocery store within like, probably like almost 32 miles. Yeah, there's a 32-mile radius of my house. There's only one store that's even open 24 hours. So that kind of shows you that, how rural I am. Of course, there's people out there that live much more rural than I do, and they may go 100 miles or more in radius before they have even one store that's open 24 hours. But just generically speaking, I live in a somewhat rural, I personally call it a semi-rural area, but it just depends on your reference point. A lot of people from the city would say, oh, this is definitely rural. But once you've lived here for a while, you're like, well, I know a lot of people that live way further out. But in a wrap up though, I just want to say, just have your grocery list, try to be mindful of the time of the day, and also, what day of the week that you're shopping. And once again, I try to go for a Wednesday or a Thursday late at night, but you could also do that early in the morning, whatever works best for you. And of course, study your area. You may have a few anomalies in your area that may, translate to doing things just a little bit different. But I've contacted quite a few people that live in different cities, before doing this video, and they pretty much are saying the same thing. Wednesday and Thursday, early or late in the day, is pretty much the best way. And this is the reason why. I love going into the grocery store, and it's just like dead quiet. Of course, if you go real late, you may have some of the stockers coming in and getting ready to stock the store, or they may have already started, but they're typically not really that loud, or they're not really a problem. Now, if you go late, like I'm talking like, I guess if you want to define late like this, but between like 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., there's going to be some problems there because you're going to have a lot of the aisles kind of congested with a lot of the resupply. So it's a lot more difficult to shop when you're trying to navigate around all these pallets and all these stockers. So I don't try to go that late. Of course, some people said that it'd be that early in the morning. However you want to define it, I don't go anything really past like 2 in the morning to 2, like 2 in the morning to like 5 is what I'm trying to say here. And that's kind of a window that's going to be not so pleasant to shop. But I just love going into a grocery store when it's dead quiet, or, it's real peaceful. There's like almost no one there, or maybe you are the only shopper. This has happened like the last 3 times I went grocery shopping. I was the only person there. And it was right before the stockers came in. So there wasn't any kind of congestion in the aisles. It was this perfect window of opportunity just to kind of, glide in and glide out. And it was one of those things that there was no one available at any of the cash registers. And there was like only 4 of the self-checkout, I guess computers or whatever available. And the only problem about that is that if you need help with something, like one of my barcodes was messed up and I couldn't get it to scan. So I hit the help button on the little self, serve checkout, and it took a couple minutes. Well, 4 or 5 minutes really, to get someone to even come over. So that's the only downfall, is that you don't really have anybody to help you if you need something. But for the most part, I don't typically need a lot of help. And so I kind of just glide in, glide out. And it's really, really amazing how fast you can do it. Sometimes I'm there literally like less than 5 minutes. And it's just that fast. And especially if you know what you're there to get, and you're not playing games and trying to solve everything as you're there, you can just get in and out so fast. Like my drive time is many, many multiples of the time that I'm actually shopping. So just wanted to say that. And I just want to say also, there's nothing really wrong with trying different things when you're at the store. Like, I know we all pretty much know or think we know what we like, but I try to make an effort at least a few times a month to just put something different in my cart. Just try something different. Even if I think that I probably won't like it, if there's a possibility that it could be something that could work out in a meal, and I know it's healthy, just try it out at least once, right? Because there's times that I thought I didn't like something, and then I tried it out, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my new favorite food. It's sometimes very surprising how things kind of turn around. Just remember, like every 7 years, our taste, our palate, for taste changes. It literally changes every 7 years. So I remember when I was like a teenager, I couldn't stand lettuce. Like lettuce to me tasted like cardboard. And when I got tacos, for example, my family always got lettuce with their tacos, right? Well, I was always like, no lettuce for me, please. And I just never understood. Like I couldn't understand. Like, why would you want to eat this tasteless, just nasty lettuce? And then I got into my, early adult years and my palate changed. And by accident, I ordered tacos and I forgot to tell, the lady that I didn't want lettuce. And so I got lettuce. And initially I was like, oh crap, this is going to really not be very good. But then I ate it anyways, just to try something different. And I was like, whoa, I like lettuce now. And it wasn't so much that there was this taste to it still that I like, because, lettuce is kind of bland for the most part. It was just that I liked the texture. And then before that, I didn't like the texture. So it's something that sometimes it's okay to revisit something, or try something new entirely. And so I hope these tips helped you at all. I know I'm a little long-winded here, but I just got thinking about this because there's a lot of people that are not efficient in their daily routines. And most of us go grocery shopping at least once or twice a week. It's a little more rare to have someone that only goes like once every 2 weeks. But if you think about the math, if you can trim off 3, 4, or 5 minutes of visit, if you can be more efficient, if you can have a better, pleasant experience grocery shopping, that really can add up. If you're talking about, let's just say you just go grocery shopping once a week, and that's over 50 times a year. So boom, right there. You have that much of an improvement, either financially or time management wise, or just effectively, acquiring the goods in a different manner that you were before. Now, of course, there are some people who say on the way home from work, that's really the most efficient way to go and get groceries. And I'm not totally against that. Even if you get off like when everybody else gets off, between like 4 and 6 p.m., even though it's not really going to be the fastest way to get your stuff and get out, there's going to be more of a delay because there's going to be a lot more people there. And you're not totally guaranteed to get what you want because you may not have it in stock because basically everybody else is shopping. But if you're talking about in the long run, it's not the worst thing to do because you won't have to make a separate trip out, in the week to get your groceries. If you're already, on the way home, and especially if the grocery store is nearby your home, it may not be the worst thing to kind of just pop in there and get some things. I know a lot of people who do that. They actually get like half the groceries in the beginning of the week on the way home from work. And then toward the end of the week, they'll pop back in there and get the other half of the groceries. And for them, it's just not that big of a deal. So it's just something to consider. I know in some towns, there's a lot of people that are just wanting to get home. There's certain types of people in certain locations that don't really like to shop right after they get off from work. And so I lived in locations that it has been true, though, that when people get off of work, they go out and they go to the mall, they go shopping. And so it's not that great of an idea to do it there. But then I've also lived in cities like I do now, my current little city, that when people get off of work, you don't see them in local businesses. They just go straight home. So it's not the worst time to go shopping. So you just kind of have to pay attention in your area. But it is a pretty good strategy because you can minimize, the travel time and then the fuel and the wear and tear on your vehicle. You can minimize all that. And over years and years of that minimizing, you get a lot of results. And so it's just something to consider. It's just like the whole adage that if you're already out doing something, or if you're on your way home from work, if you're already out, might as well go ahead and maximize whatever it is that needs to be done with your time. So if you hit a couple errands on the way home from work, then that just means, once again, you don't have to do it later on in the day or on the weekend or anything like that, whenever you're off from work. So, you know, sometimes when you're out, don't just go out and just do one thing. Like I have a rule in my house that we have to have at least 2 or more things that we need to do before we actually go and do a trip to do something. So, for example, when I go and get groceries, I always, you know, typically, you know, refuel my vehicle. So I get gas, and then typically I either go to the bank or I go to maybe the library or something else, you know, whatever it is, depending on what time of the day it is. And so a minimum of 2 things per outing, but I think I average around 3 things I accomplish. And so that's just something to consider if you're trying to be more efficient as well. So, hey, thanks for checking the video out. You guys take care.